Well, 4 hours to deliver $508 million of tax relief to Minnesotans. I'd say it's a pretty good day's work for a carpenter and a farmer and a retired accountant. But we feel very good about the bill that we passed today. I think the message is probably over at the House now, and we're looking forward to them taking it up and having a conversation. And I'm sure there'll be discussion about whether they should concur or not concur. And one thing about being the leader, motions get made. So they're going to have conversations about what to do. But I really deeply want to thank Senator Rest and Senator Skoye. They put a remarkable effort in putting together a major tax relief bill in a 3-week period of the session. So, and want to thank them also for giving some consideration to some of the governor's provisions that are now in the bill that weren't in the House bill when they came over, things that we certainly support, a significant enhancement of the working family credit and the repeal of the gift tax provision and some improvement in Minnesota's estate tax so it doesn't impact estates to the extent that it did. So, you know, and the repeal of the B2B provisions, and you just need to remember the Republicans called those a mistake. They weren't used last year to balance the budget. The sales tax article was internal to itself. They were used to provide the revenue to create a sales tax exemption for local units of government and to be able to do the upfront capital equipment exemption. That's what they were used for. That's what they paid for. And I certainly support the continuation of those tax exemptions. Unfortunately, state revenue came in over what we had forecasted last February, and we had a little extra money so that we can continue to provide those sales tax exemptions that were provided for in the bill, and at the same time repeal the revenue that it took to provide them. So I think it's really a win-win situation for Minnesotans, and I very much enjoyed being part of the process in the Senate. I want to thank Senator Skoye for allowing me to be on the tax committee. Oftentimes, majority leader or tax chairs get a little nervous when the majority leader wants to sit on their committee. So, but he's been very welcoming in having me a member of the committee. So.
Okay. All right. Well, so very soon the House will be taking up the bill that the Senate just sent over, a middle-class tax cut bill. You know, as we worked all along this session, we want to make sure that we work to quickly pass that bill today so that Governor Dayton can sign it into law and we can deliver these tax cuts to over 1 million Minnesotans. I do want to thank Governor Dayton as well for his leadership on this, and Senator Bach for his leadership, and the other senators for moving this. We did move, as Senator Bach noted, with unprecedented speed to get this tax bill completed this year. And to get such meaningful legislation off the 2 floors and to the governor for signature that's going to benefit so many Minnesotans. And we're very pleased about that. These are real tax cuts that are going to make real difference in Minnesotans' lives. Again, over 1 million people will receive this tax cut, and they're targeted at Minnesotans that can put those things to good use, to working families, to middle-class families, to students, to married couples, and more. So we're really pleased about the progress we've made. I think it's important to note that we're in the position to provide these tax cuts, again, as Senator Bach noted, because of the tough choices we made last year to stabilize our budget and to set us in a position where we can look to the future and continue to do the work for middle-class Minnesotans. And just want to leave on this note, while this is significant progress for this session and for Minnesota, we have more work to do to build economic opportunity for Minnesotans. And we're going to, I hope that, and I anticipate, I have every reason to think that we are going to continue to make this kind of progress moving forward on those initiatives into the future. So I want to thank Senator Bach and the entire Minnesota Senate, as well as Governor Dayton, and I look forward to continuing to I look forward to getting back to the floor as soon as we can so that we can get this bill passed and to the governor's desk. And I don't, Representative Murphy, do you want? So, and with that, we really would like to get back to the floor. So I think you can catch us after the session if you have any more questions for us, if that's all right. Thank you.
One other thing that I probably forgot to mention is there is a significant piece in that bill that assures fiscal stability for the state going forward. And it's the $150 million that we used out of the state's surplus to beef up the state's budget reserves. And I was very disappointed at numerous Republican amendments that wanted to take money out of that reserve and jeopardized our financial stability going forward. Another recession will come, and revenues will dip down. And having a mechanism in place that not only adds $150 million, but takes a part of future budget surpluses and enhances the reserve even more is likely to be one of the monumental pieces coming out of this legislative session. So I again want to thank Senator Scoy and Senator Rest for having the foresight to include that in this bill. It's much easier to spend it or to cut taxes with it. Those are very popular. It's probably not quite as popular to put it away, but the three of us have been through a lot of budget battles over the decades, and we understand the significance it is in being able to bridge future revenue shortfalls so we don't have to, the default position isn't immediately to go and borrow it from our kids through a school shift. So this is going to make budget stability in the future much, much more reliable.
The only thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I just want to briefly say this, is that we did leave a pretty fair chunk of dollars on the bottom line for a second tax bill. And so we're hopeful that the House will be moving forward on that. We have a lot of member provisions that are important. I think there's some agency provisions that are important. So we're going to continue work. We've got a full 2 weeks of hearings scheduled coming up to start working on that. And I know Representative Lencheski has been working on it also. So that's also part of this initiative today.
Well, I want to thank Senator Bach and Senator Scoy, Senator Rest for the terrific work in getting this bill passed. It would have been yesterday if we'd had a little cooperation, but it's, you know, this is the first time in my memory that the legislature has passed a major tax bill in less than a month after they came into session. So the urgency was apparent, and I'll thank the House leadership in advance for passing a bill, and I look forward to signing in law this evening. Commissioner Franz will have a cautionary note after I finish for people who may be in a situation where they should wait a couple days before they file until the changes are put into place. But this is a monumental victory for the DFL leadership in the legislature, and you know, it just shows that we have a balanced approach to Minnesota. That's what people wanted in the November election of 2012, a balanced approach, not at the extreme of all cuts, but at the extreme of prudent fiscal management. And as I like to keep pointing out to people, if we hadn't had a $617 million deficit projected a year ago, and we didn't have to pay off almost half of the $2.8 billion of debt to the schools that the Republican administration racked up before, we wouldn't have had to raise anybody's taxes. But we had a choice. We either raise taxes or we provide no investments in education, in which case we wouldn't have all-day kindergarten starting in September. We wouldn't have tuition freezes for Minnesota and University of Minnesota students. We wouldn't have the progress we've made in early childhood. We wouldn't have the money to provide property tax relief. So there's all this talk about, you know, whether did they go down or up slightly? Well, they went down slightly statewide. And that was in contrast to an average annual increase of 6.5% per year for the previous decade, 86% increase in property taxes. So for some of the folks who were responsible for that to quibble about whether they're flat or whether they've gone down a bit, well, it's just absurd. Just absurd. So I'm very proud of what's been accomplished here. I thank, again, Senator Bach, Speaker Thiessen, all the leaders, and now it's on to the House. You want to just qualify the...
Yeah, I just want to answer the question of what should taxpayers do today. So right now, if you have not filed your tax return yet, we would advise you to wait until Monday. We'll give out some more detailed advice. But generally, if you want to wait, as we make these changes, we'll get them implemented as soon as we can. We're going to work this weekend to come up with a new implementation plan. But for those folks who have mortgage insurance deductions, they should wait until Monday. They get more information. A deduction for educator expenses, those folks should wait. Working family credit, people who qualify for the working family credit, anywhere from $10,000 to $45,000 in income, they should wait. Higher education tuition deduction, they should wait. And the student loan interest deduction. Those are the categories that we expect to change and try to implement those changes as soon as possible. We'll give more guidance on Monday, but our general guidance is we hope to have these available and input into our system and into the software vendors by April 1. If you've already filed, we will do three things. We will examine your return to see if we can make the adjustment for you after we make our changes. We will notify you, taxpayer, if you need to give us more information, and we'll notify you if you need to file an amended return. But we'll give more concrete information on Monday.
With any more precision, can you say what the universe of people expected to get some sort of tax benefit out of this is? I think the other day you said 300,000 to 500,000. That's a pretty wide range.
It really, the situation really depends upon how many people qualify, for example, in working family credit. Those income levels are kind of hard to predict sometimes, and also how many people will actually take advantage of it. But it's a pretty wide range of people that may or may not take advantage of these deductions and credits.
After they get the refunds plugged into the system, we'll ask them to do a closer evaluation of that.
I just might mention, as of yesterday, about 50% of all the taxpayers have filed, so that's why we're going to work really hard to get these changes in place for the other 50% who haven't filed yet.
Commissioner, before you leave, are you saying that if somebody has already filed and they need an amended return, you will tell them, they don't have to contact you?
Yes, in fact, we would encourage people to not file an amended return immediately, that we will contact them if they need to file an amended return.
The one-day delay, are there taxpayers who won't get tax cuts this year because of the one-day delay? Was anyone impacted?
The delay affects our ability to process this immediately. The one-day delay, what the impact of that was is we're going to try to get this all affected and turned out and rolled out with the software vendors by April 1. The question is, how soon can we get to that April 1 deadline? The delay means that we may not hit the April 1 deadline, and it will take a few more days, and it might delay people getting the amount of money they're entitled to, but it will not mean they won't get the refund or the deduction.
I just want to point out, as I said yesterday, part of the reason we had a deadline and what we did was for the administrative efficiency, so we could have this these changes made smoothly, so we didn't have a repeat of what happened last fall with the MNsure. So we needed the cooperation of the Republicans to meet a very tight deadline so that they could plug those changes in. And now it's Friday afternoon, it'll be Friday evening before I sign the bill. Could plug them in yesterday and have today working on it, and we'd be farther along. So, the reality is, if we had cooperation yesterday, we'd be a lot better off.
And one more question for Commissioner, if I could. Just to be clear, so if you've already filed your tax return, it still is a good idea just to wait for the Revenue Department either to notify you, send you an additional tax cut, or tell you to file an amended return.
That's true, because we will be able to actually process the refund for those people, for some people that qualify. We can make the changes ourselves. They won't have to do anything. But they shouldn't file a refund claim or amended return until they hear from us, because we will notify them if they need to file an amended return.
How soon will they hear from you?
It'll be after the April 15th, the deadline, because we'll be busy processing returns until then.
And they shouldn't worry about missing the April 15th deadline.
Everyone should worry about missing the April 15th deadline.
There's no
if they filed, for those folks who've already filed, the 50% have already filed, they've made the deadline, and everyone else does need to remember, regardless of this little delay, April 15th is the deadline.
Governor, this takes a bulk of the surplus, I think half of the surplus, kind of out of play. How do you see the remaining pieces?
Well, with the surplus, it takes about half.
Okay, so about half is a reserve. So, I mean, I think this is, most of what I was asking for in the tax area, and as Senator Skoye said, there'll be another tax bill to be considered later in the session. This is the one that was time urgent. So, and again, I don't remember any time in my many years in and around the legislature that the tax bill's been passed less than a month after the legislature went into session. So this has been really fast-tracked, and the first part of the reserve, and so now we'll deal. I guess the House has put out targets with some specificity. The Senate will be following shortly, and so then and I've got my recommendations. So then we're going to be dealing with the tough question of what additional spending is really essential, and what else should we do with the remainder.
Governor, this was a bit of a chaotic week at the Capitol with this tax bill. Should Democrats have worked things out a little better?
Well, again, I'd point out again and put it in context. I'm not aware of a time when a major tax bills passed this quickly. And people did recognize there was a deadline. I mean, I have an advantage over legislators. I only have to convince myself. I don't always agree with myself all the time, but I can make a decision. They've got to go through a process. They've got to go through committees. They've got to go through the minority who wants to delay things. So, it's just part of the process, and that's why, again, I congratulate Majority Leader Bach and Senator Skoye and Senator Rest, and I thank in advance Speaker Thiessen and Representative Murphy. And if I get a bill tonight, I'll have to forego my planned half marathon run, but got to give up something for the cause, and we'll have a bill for Minnesota as soon as possible, and thanks to good work of the Department of Revenue, and there are people willing to work around the weekend and work, we'll get this thing taken care of as quickly and smoothly as possible.
Why are these tax cuts important to Minnesota taxpayers?
Well, it reduces their taxes, and as the ones that Commissioner France said, they're retroactive. They mean that people are going to get actual dollar reductions in their taxes owed for the calendar year 2013. They'll be seeing those checks, or they'll be discounting those cuts off of their current tax bill, and then of course next year, 2015, for calendar 14, even more of those personal income tax reductions are going to kick in. You know, we did not raise personal income taxes the first 2 years that the Republicans insisted. So I wanted to raise on the top 2%. We did not raise personal income taxes at all last year on 98% of the people in Minnesota. You know, the Republicans like to crow about, you know, tax increases. We raised property income taxes on 2%. 98% of Minnesotans have it since I took office, and now, thanks to the DFL legislator, they've received a personal income tax cut. And I think that's something to be very proud of.
Could somebody clarify, earlier nonpartisan Senate staff said the tax cut bill was $443 million, and now you're saying it's 508. Could someone clarify what the size of this actually is?
Well, one is an impact on the state budget, and the other is the tax impact. The tax ramifications are 508. The line that we score on our spreadsheet for what we would call spending is 434. I do want to, 444. I do want to add one thing to what's going to impact Minnesotans, and you heard both Senator Rest and I talk about it on the floor, and that is the working family tax credit. That is a recognition of working Minnesotans, and they are actually going to get an increased credit. We conformed for 2013, 25% expansion for 2014. Really significant effort for those working Minnesotans, and we expanded those that qualified to go up the income scale a bit. So, real significant impact on Minnesota's lives.
That was really a Senate initiative, which you guys should be credit for.
Will you explain those numbers once again?
Is the $508 million, is that the reduction in the tax burden? Is that what the 508 is?
So as is the case in a number of initiatives, the effective dates of when something comes into law is very important here. And the relief that's being given, the 508, includes the upfront capital equipment. But since it's delayed until July 1, that's why we only are going to affect this year's budget by the 440. But the relief they get is 508. Part of it is delayed until July 1. I can see skepticism, but that's the way it works.
Tax bill, you need at least an hour.
Yes, but that is the way it works.
$508 million, that is the reduction in the tax burden. Some of it won't be realized right away. But
Exactly, that's it. Exactly it. You should be on the tax committee.
It will also be accurate to characterize it as a 400 and some tax cut in this biennium.
I think the way to characterize it is there's $508 million of tax relief in the bill, and the state is paying $444 million to achieve that.
And the money for the reserves is
We should do that every day.
The money for the reserves is above and beyond that accounts for the half of the surplus that is now.
Correct. The reserves are in addition to the.
Did the bill on the floor today change these numbers? Or was that how it went onto the floor? Like your amendment, did it change the numbers?
It changed slightly because of the state tax amendment.
Is this going to cost the Department of Revenue any extra money to process this? You know, if you're going to have to contact filers or issue refunds.
Only if we appropriate it to them.
And they did. Thank you, by the way. In the bill was an appropriation of about $1 million for the Department of Revenue for us to help finance this increased activity level, the programming, the testing that we're going to need to do. So that's going to, we'll be utilizing those funds to make this happen as quickly as we can.
And would you keep that money even if this had passed earlier this week?
It's been in the bill. It was in the House bill, and it's been in the Senate bill all along.
How many people do you think will be working on this weekend in your department?
You know, I don't have an estimate of the number of people, We were putting together the team this afternoon when I left. There'll be a number of them. Today, a lot of the people today will be programmers trying to get the code changed. I don't know the actual number. I give, you know, I don't even know the number.
You?
Yes, but I'm not going to help them very much. I'm going to stay out in my office out of their way.
Any final